There we go. All right. Hey, it's Dr. Kate Walker. Welcome to your Tuesday training. Every Tuesday in your Step It Up membership, you can join me live here. You can join me live in our dedicated Facebook page. Or if you're a busy woman or man or then you can always join me on a replay. Joining me on a replay, you can do that in a couple of ways, right? I will turn this into a podcast episode. And if you're a Step It Up member, I will turn this into a training that we will put into your profile. Now, if you remember last week, we had Dr. Tara Fox talk about bridging the gap from grad school to LPC associate. Now, those hour-long expert trainings, those will get turned into a CE. We actually take the replays, add some quiz questions, put that into your Step It Up membership. And that's why you get unlimited CEs with your Step It Up membership, because we are constantly putting in those 1 hour expert trainings so that you can get your CEs. And we've got a great lineup coming up. In June, I just booked attorney and LPC supervisor Laura Clement. In July, I've got the amazing Mark Tovar. And in August, I've got Dr. Dawn Brunkenhofer, who's going to talk about professional wills. So lots of great expert trainings coming up. They are free. You even Step It Uppers have to sign up, but if you miss it, no worries. You will get that expert training recycled, refurbished into a 1 hour online or asynchronous CE. And that's why having a Step It Up membership is an awesome thing. And I'm so glad you're here. So today, I'm going to talk about the clinical skill of using Rogers with your clients. Now, if you're wondering what this has to do with perhaps supervision or supervising through a person-centered lens or supervising using a Rogers theory, that is actually on another episode. I've got that in the podcast. It's in your training, and I talk about supervising through a Rogers theory or a Rogers lens. My goal, and this isn't going to be a long episode today, my goal is that you take away some ideas to use with a client and have some reasoning behind that. So I'm going to start this by saying, well, when did how did I first start to conceptualize Rogers? Well, of course, in my master's program, I had Dr. Brune teaching my theories course, and he used an evaluation called a Kharkov level system. And I'm going to share my screen so you can see exactly what that looks like. And to leave the Sam Houston State Master's Program, at least in his class, you had to have achieved a Kharkov level 5 reflection in the video demonstrations. And forgive me, it's been a minute, so I don't remember if these were role plays or these with actual practicum, actual clients in our practicum internships. But we had levels of concreteness. So level 1 would be reflecting content only. Like the client says, I'm so sad my dog died. You would say back, it sounds like you're sad that your dog died, right? That would be considered a level 1 Kharkov demonstration. So all the way to a Kharkov level 5 would be not only reflecting content, but you would reflect emotion and you would reflect meaning, and then you would extend that meaning, right? So what I hear you saying is you're sad because your dog died. And I can tell by looking at you that this is devastating. And perhaps you're even wondering if you'll ever be happy again. And that really, really worries you, right? So taking that reflection of concreteness, adding emotion, validating, extending, right? And we had to demonstrate a Kharkov level 5 before we were ever allowed to ask questions. So what I'm showing here for those of you who are listening is this Kharkov document, and it's a lot of words, so I'm not gonna talk you through it, but it is explaining what I'm talking about, this idea of a level 1 being content only, and then the level 5 adding without the question. So I'm going to stop the share for a second and just say how important it was when we were learning person-centered techniques, person-centered theory. We were not allowed to ask questions. I mean, other than, of course, the intake interview, and we're taking all the assessment questions and things like that, right? If we were trying to join with our clients, right? And that's what we were doing as newbies, right? Newbie counselors, we're trying to join, we're trying to build rapport. And this idea that we were going to leave Sam Houston State University's counseling program with the ability to demonstrate this level 5 Kharkov, well, we were becoming person-centered therapists, right? So we weren't allowed to ask questions, in a nutshell. I know I'm beating around the bush, but that's the nature, the nut of the matter. We were not permitted to ask questions. So how does that apply? What does that mean for you as a counselor? And why would I ever put into the title, Got Resistance, Use Rogers? When I was supervising, that's one of the things, as I was supervising my level 1, even level 2 supervisees, you know, they would think, or they would have the impression that they had great rapport with this client, but then they would come to supervision and start reporting, you know, they're just not really listening to me anymore. They're not following the directives. They're not doing the homework, or in session, they're yeah-butting me, or they're coming back and they're getting off topic, you know, all of that control stuff we want as a new counselor. And so I would always say, let's shift into Rogers. Thinking about a car, like a transmission, let's shift into Rogers gear. And I would challenge them to go back to their session with their client and simply reflect, and challenge them to not ask questions. No follow-ups, no homework, just take a session. Or, you know, if that was too hard, challenge them for 15 minutes. Just reflect content, just reflect meaning. And it never failed, right? They would come back to supervision and they would say, oh, all right, I think we're on the same page again. So when a client's being resistant, remember, resistance serves a purpose. Resistance is the client's way of protecting themselves, right? You haven't earned this part of my story yet. So I'm going to defend, I'm going to, yeah, but I'm going to, you know, not do the things. When you employ Rogers and you get back to just this, I hear you, right? I get where you're coming from. I'm going to prove that I get where you're coming from by reflecting, by extending, by validating, by making sure you feel heard. And you don't have to tell me you feel heard, right? I don't need your validation. I don't need you to say, hey, good job, counselor. I can tell you're hearing me. I'm going to be able to tell because you're opening up to me again. Or we're working together, co-collaborating on homework assignments and goals and things like that. All right, so I'm going to screen share again. So if you're listening, don't worry. I'm totally going to talk about what I'm sharing. So I'm going to show you something called the CCSR. And the CCSR is an instrument that was developed by Dr. Glenn Lambie. And if you're a counselor educator, you've seen this. We use this all the time. You can Google this. I don't share it because I don't have permission to share it. So I'm not going to put it in any of our course documents or anything like that, but it's a wonderful instrument. But I want to point out to you, the criteria is based on Rogers. So let's look at part 1, counseling skills and therapeutic conditions. If you're listening to this, I have a document pulled up and we're looking at primary counseling skills like reflecting, paraphrasing, reflecting feelings, reflecting, summarizing. So 3 different types of reflecting. And if you're going to just nail this skill, 5 out of 5, you got this, then you're going to demonstrate consistent ability to use summarization to include content, feelings, behaviors, and future plans. You're going to demonstrate appropriate use of reflection of feelings as a primary approach. You're going to demonstrate appropriate use of paraphrasing as a primary therapeutic approach. Not one time in that 5 out of 5 criteria does it say you asked a bunch of questions, or you asked the right question, or you asked enough questions so that they finally just said, fine, you know, here's my story. So this is a very a basic skill for brand new counselors. But even those of us who've been in the field for a long time, when we sense resistance, and I don't care if you're working with couples or individuals or what age you're working with, if a client is resisting you, there's no sense in going on and disputing and replacing and doing all the things with that, or creating a genogram, right? Or structural family map, or however you practice. Because what the client has done, they've drawn a line in the sand and they have said, you don't get to go past here. You haven't earned this part of me yet. And that's okay. That's their right. We're not there with a sledgehammer to bust that boundary down. We are going to honor them by giving them that unconditional positive regard, that feeling of being valued and valuable, loved and lovable. And when we can prove to them we are going to create that safe space, then perhaps we've earned their story. So I'm going to check the Facebook group and see if anybody has posted questions, and I do not see any. Again, if you're looking at this from a supervisor standpoint, think about it a couple of ways, right? Check out the episode where I teach supervising through a Rogers lens, right? Using person-centered theory and supervision. But then imagine if you're trying to teach this skill to a level 1 supervisee, right? They come to you from a university you're not familiar with, and you're like, ooh, dang, I don't think they know how to reflect. Something like Gary Lamby's CCSR is a beautiful way to teach them. And by the by, I have my new book coming out, right? You've got the Clinical Supervision Survival Guide. And I have published an assessment in there that's an amazing instrument called the SPAI. And I'm super excited about this because I think the SPAI does a wonderful job of teaching your level 1 supervisees exactly what you mean by reflecting content, exactly what you mean, when you're reflecting meaning. So if you are listening, I'm going to put a link to get on the wait list for that book. It's not out yet. I'm still doing the final revisions on it. It should be out like in about a month or so. So you're going to want to be sure and get on that wait list. All right, that's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for listening, watching. If you're listening to the podcast, good job, you. You're listening while you're driving somebody to something probably a little bit boring. Otherwise, you'd be having a conversation with them, right? So thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to learn something new today. You guys have a great week.